I'm still on my break, but hope you revisit this conversation with Oscar as we discuss how to improve your martial arts training. These principles can be applied to any sport or exercise program. Since it's the start of the new year, I hope you find some of these tips useful and helpful. Hi, I'm Mimi Chan. Welcome to Culture Chat. Thanks for joining the conversation. What does it take to be successful in martial arts or fitness? How can you improve your martial arts or training regimen? Oscar Agramonte and I sit down to discuss the philosophy and actions that have helped us in our Kung Fu and fitness journeys. Repetition is the mother of mastery. Consistency over time is the key to success. These are phrases we use to help remind us of how we can be more mindful in our practice. Progress takes patience, hard work, and perseverance. We hope our discussion prompts anyone who wants to improve in any aspect of their life by asking questions that bring about self-awareness. We learned a lot from this conversation and hope you will too. It would also mean so much if you would rate it and leave me feedback wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you would like to help keep this podcast going, you can support with a donation by becoming a patron of the show or visiting my website. You can donate as little as $1 per month. I would appreciate it. For comments or suggestions, email me at mimi@culturechatpodcast.com or reach out on social media at SifuMimiChan. Now, on with the show.
Hello, Oscar.
Hello, Mimi.
Oh, my favorite co-host and guest.
Am I really, though? Because, I mean, you had some pretty good guests.
I have, but I think by default, you end up being my favorite of all time because you're GOAT, greatest of all time.
I got it. That's great.
That was for our audience. I know you got the reference. And so audience members, go ahead and ping us and let us know if you got a reference and where that's from. But you and I spoke earlier in the year, a few weeks ago, about a challenge that was issued to a lot of your clients, our students, in order to drop 2 sizes within 8 weeks. And that was a short-term goal. That was okay, we're going to go all in. Here's how we can do this safely. And I think one of the things that we've gotten feedback on is even with an 8-week challenge, people wanting to see results after like 2 days.
Yes.
And
everyone wants results right away for everything.
Right, exactly. So I thought it would be kind of an interesting conversation for us to see how that also rolls into what you and I do in our daily lives, which of course is teach Kung Fu, Tai Chi, and your fitness coaching, and the expectation of people in terms of results, improvement, and moving, like, I guess, in the right direction in their minds of what they think is going to happen when they sign up to do a program, and then the actual results and like that setting expectations. So I think it's important for people to realize, like at Walam, we are a very traditional school. And so we kind of follow a tradition and culture guideline that sometimes doesn't align properly. And I was curious for you on the fitness side, is it the same? I mean, 'cause you get to do both, right? Like how that kind of plays into what our society is facing even right now on a bigger scale with we're all waiting for the vaccine. Me in particular, I'm very anxious about it. Getting my family vaccinated.
I hadn't noticed.
Getting my family vaccinated was like a huge priority. I lose sleep over it. And then I get to talk to friends and family in other countries and realize how fortunate we are that we have such a supply and that things are moving along, not as fast as I would like, of course, but like it's that perspective, you know. So like on several different lenses here, from the minute to the larger, it's just such an interesting human nature, I think, for us and our expectations.
Right. So the challenge for all of us is that we have a mindset, or we have this imagination of what we want a goal to be, but we don't have a realistic expectation of what it would take to get there. And that doesn't mean that it is always has to be extremely hard. That doesn't always have to be the case, but we don't all take the time to think, what exactly are the daily consistent steps that I need to do over time to achieve this goal?
And I've heard you say many, many times to your clients, to students, that the key to success is consistency over time. But I think we can keep, or maybe you have some refinement of that.
Yeah, no, I think the key to success is consistency over time. The challenge is, what is it that you are being consistent about?
Right. So
So,
we can
yeah.
plug in consistent hard work for Kung Fu, or consistent stretching if you want to get more flexible, or consistent eating properly if we're looking at weight loss and muscle building, things like that. So, like, there's kind of an extra plug in, but that's why it's consistency over time, right? Like, you could say, well, I've been coming to you, Oscar, every, week for 2, 3 times a week, but I don't see a quote unquote result, for example. And so there is some consistency over time, but then how do you then address that? Because we are in a, like I said, very impatient society. And I think actually, if COVID has taught us anything, it was that we need to be patient, and we need to be able to kind of look at the scope of the way the things are and take that step back. Like, we had to stay in quarantine and we had to be patient with that. Like, I think there was a little bit of a test of everyone's resilience. And so for the fitness side, we see a lot of impatience. Yes.
Well, so I think the problem is, you said, okay, what if a client came in and said, I've been training with you for this much time, this many times a week, and I'm not seeing results? That hasn't happened to me. And I don't think it's necessarily because clients haven't felt that way. It's probably just because I built a good enough relationship that they don't feel comfortable. Not they don't feel comfortable. They don't want to come across that way. So I'm not saying that my clients have not felt that. But if they have, it is my fault for not having a conversation about what exactly is your goal, and do we have a timeline for it? And then having a conversation about, well, is that timeline realistic? And then having a deeper conversation of, well, now here's what, if that's when you want to do it by this time, then here's what you need to do every day, or 2 times a day, or every week, to over that period of time to get to that goal.
So then, if I'm hearing you correctly, it's pretty much a lack of communication between either you and your trainer, you and your teacher, you and your sifu, or you and yourself, of what your goal is. Because sometimes someone thinks, I'm going to the gym 3 times a week. I think my goal is to lose 10 pounds, let's just say, right? But then I'm going there and I realize I don't want to change my eating. I just realize now my goal, what I thought was 10-pound loss, is now, you know what? I've just been feeling better. I have more energy. I'm sleeping better. Like, those things are adjusted. So the biggest thing is setting a clear objective or goal, or setting, like, having clarity in what you want out of
Right.
your health or fitness or kung fu or tai chi regimen. Like, really being able to tap into what we like to call self-awareness. And I think that's a much harder thing to grasp, because it's easy to put like a little, like, oh, here's a goal I want, but that actually may not be their goal. For example, you've said many times, when clients start with you, they always tell you their goals, and then in a few weeks you realize that's not really their goal, and they don't even realize it.
Yeah, and this is something that I will admit, goal setting is not my forte. When it comes to training clients, I'm really good at building a relationship, creating this environment where they feel there's a judgment-free zone, and cater to any restrictions that they may have, working on their strengths. But I don't always do the best job of goal setting, which I think probably would save some frustration on both ends, as the coach and as a student, or as a teacher and the student. So sometimes, maybe not asking, hey, well, what's your goal? That could be maybe too vague. It could be even something as, hey, what is it that you want to accomplish, right? Um, because fitness can be a challenge. So why is this? What is it that you want to accomplish, and also why is it important to you? And then maybe digging deeper. So I think having the clarity, and approaching your student or your client as with an inquiring mind, where you start asking a lot of questions first, as opposed to saying, here's what we're going to do, because one, my programming is awesome, or two, hey, Kung Fu is so great, or Tai Chi is so great. And this kind of gets into sort of not just the conversation with your student, but almost like the sales part of like, hey, this is why you want to come and train with us, because we actually care about finding out exactly what it is that you want to accomplish. And if we can't help you with that, then we can honestly say, well, maybe this is another avenue for you. Like, we want you to be able to find your home for fitness or martial arts.
Yeah. And so from the fitness side, I think there's a little bit more clarity than on the martial arts side. From my experience and objective point of view, it's just, I mean, just from my perspective, my perception of what I've seen, right? And so I think it's easier to say, oh, I want to be able to deadlift this amount, or I want to be able to do 5 pull-ups, or, oh, I think that's simpler because the Chinese martial art journey is not as linear in a sense. Like, it can be if it's, I want to get a split, or I want to learn the sword, or I want to, be able to kick this high. I think, but that is such a surface level goal for a martial artist. And I think that's what I struggle with in being able to relay to modern day. And I say modern day, I mean people who are living in the US here now with us, and the last 20, 30 years even, right? Like modern day thought of that expectation of, I'm signing up at a Kung Fu school, I'm going to look like Jet Li and Jackie Chan in a few weeks, or I'm going to be able to do these cool things. And it's just such a long journey,
Well, so I think on both sides, it could be a long journey. And by both sides, I mean something like training in a traditional martial arts like Kung Fu and just trying to get in shape. The initial questions are usually just surface questions, right? If you want someone to be successful at something, you have to dig a little bit deeper. And I think once you find that out, then you can say, all right, now this person has the reason and the motivation to do this for the long term, whatever it is, whether it's fitness or martial arts. And I think for the reasons, as if you were to ask someone, hey, what is it that you want to accomplish? Well, why is that important to you? And then follow that, why is that important to you, with maybe 4 other whys. Well, why is that? And why is that? I think that at the end of that, on no matter what someone's movement, fitness, martial arts journey is, then the answers get more and more narrow. Like, I think almost everybody wants the same thing: to live a healthier life, to feel, a sense of accomplishment, the opportunity to defend myself if I needed to feel strong, to help my family. Like, I think at the base, all of our needs are sort of similar, even though at the surface, when you approach whatever it is that you're trying to do, it may seem superficial, but that's our job if we consider ourselves an actual teacher of a martial art, of a style, of fitness, of health, is not just thinking about, oh, this person wants to do 5 pull-ups, or this person wants to look like Jet Li. There's probably something more to it. And I don't know. I think what I do agree with is that the student who comes in for traditional Chinese martial arts will have a harder time maybe specifically identifying why it is that they chose it. Because we do get some people who are like, well, I just felt the energy here. And for us to try to like define what that means could be a little bit more challenging.
Yeah. So you're kind of talking to, in my mind right now, like as an audience member, like if you were a coach, or if you were I think we credit the book, Start With Why, Simon Sinek, like making sure that we as coaches, as teachers, are asking these questions. But as a student, they should also be asking themselves these questions, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. But that is kind of why they come to see the teacher seeks the student, is because sometimes they may not even know to ask the question. And then second, they may not even know what questions to ask. So yes, we all are on kind of similar journeys, right? We're all also students, but I guess what I'm saying is we can help facilitate that and move them along by just having asking the right questions and
Right.
listening.
Right. Of course. What I meant though was for our audience members, most of them are clients or people who are students and wanting to learn, right? And
Correct.
so for them, helping them with the journey of, I don't understand why I haven't progressed, or I don't understand why it takes so long to get to stick in Walam. Like, I can't believe I can't touch a weapon for almost a year, or maybe, it depends. People come in and they ask, well, when do I get to learn the sword? I'm like, ooh, definitely over a year. And that seems like a
It could
really
be
long way
years.
off. It could be years. And that seems very intangible. And on one hand, I don't want to lie to them, be like, oh, yeah, it's coming, because I want to set the expectation. But on the other hand, I'm trying to put myself in their shoes of, wow, I mean, that's kind of one of my goals. And like, it just doesn't seem like I'll get there with this path. Right. And so, especially when you have a lot of art forms and schools and YouTube universities out there where they think they can just get what they want from it. Right. And so as a student, truly seeking traditional martial arts, like actually traditional martial arts, there is, I think the point I'm trying to make is there's so much value into, one, finding the proper school that has true tradition and what I believe is great instruction, and not just somewhere that doesn't have that depth. But that's also a whole nother conversation for something that's hard to find. But really understanding as you go to take that journey, I think you said it to a 5-year-old today, like anything worthwhile is hard. It's hard
Right.
work, right? And so I would say Kung Fu is one of the hardest things to do well, right? Like, we can all start
I
it and do
definitely agree with
it. We
that.
can all start it and do it. But in order to really do it well, one would ask, well, I don't understand why I'm still on my horse stances.
Yeah.
And
So
I already remember it, or I know it. And like getting that concept of helping students and clients understand that just because you remember something doesn't mean you know it.
yeah. So I think now that then if you're approaching it as the student and you're thinking, well, why have I not moved on, or why am I still here? Is they're not clear on what mastery means, right? Like the purpose of training in something like martial arts should be to try to master yourself, and so that maybe requires a definition of like, well, what is mastery? And one definition could be, hey, mastery is just your ability to perform the process, like to actually do the things that you need to do consistently. Um, if someone is not, if someone doesn't have the ability to commit to doing something consistently over time, then I don't know. I think part of our job is to make them realize, okay, you've been coming here training for 5 years and you come twice a week. What are you doing outside of those 2 hours out of the week? Because there's like 170, 100 something hours in a week. So you're spending 2 of those hours practicing. And your expectation is that those 2 hours are enough to continuously have you progress. Yes, you will improve, but maybe it's not meeting with what your expectation of how much time it is. Like it's the same as when clients of mine are tracking their nutrition journal. They think they're eating a lot less calories than they actually are until they start tracking it. Or if I were to ask them, hey, well, how would you rate your nutrition? And there's no judgment, and they say, well, I think it's pretty high. I'm like at a 7 or 8. I'm like, awesome. Well, just send me your nutrition journal. And then they start writing everything down. And then I talked to them about it. I was like, well, here's what this does. They're like, okay. I've had someone just this week go from rating themselves as a 7 in their nutrition on a scale of 1 to 10 to then sending me their journal and me just talking to them about the journal and them saying, well, you know what? I think it's a 2 now. Now, maybe I didn't do as good of a job as a coach to motivate them. But at the same time, I was trying to be realistic. And I think in the flip side of that, for the martial arts part, you could have that conversation with the student, or the student can think for themselves like, oh, I only practice 2 hours a week. The other 150 plus hours, I'm sitting, sleeping, eating, watching TV, on my computer, not thinking about my martial arts practice.
Yeah,
So
I think painting that picture is super, super clear, brings a lot of clarity, because I think that there is that misconception, just because I'm showing up to class, that's enough. And it could be enough as long as you're
Mhm.
setting your expectation of what you want to get out of it. I think
Right.
parents for, Kung Fu students as well, usually have a bit of a struggle with that. Like, why hasn't my child gotten to the next test, or why haven't they learned more, or why didn't they get the stick yet, or why are some of them on the performance track and others are not? And I don't think there's enough of be asking themselves the why. Like, well,
Right.
why is that? Have I been putting these extra time and efforts, and what does that really mean? So I love that we're having this conversation, because I feel like it's really valuable. We have a lot of Walla members and students who listen to this, a lot of traditional martial artists, a lot of people who are into health and fitness. And I feel like it's a little bit of a tough love conversation of, check yourself, basically. It's
Right.
basically, and it's something that you and I constantly do for ourselves, right? It's this constant check and balance of, okay, am I putting in the time? Like, it's so easy to go, oh, my joints are achy. It's because I'm over 40 now. No,
Right.
it's because we don't prioritize doing our joint mobility in the morning, in the evening, maybe throughout the day, and then making sure that we are doing all the checks and balances that's necessary. Now, that's not always realistic. Like, we get it. Like, everybody has to work. They have their families, they have other things. But I think it's that, where you and I like to go down this rabbit hole of extreme ownership, by the book by Jocko Willink and
Leif
Leif,
Babin.
yeah. And so it's, I don't know
Cool
why it's
names, both
escaping
of
me.
them,
I
by the
know,
way.
I know, they're like they're very cool names.
Like superhero names.
Yeah, they're like superhero names. So, and we love that because it really makes you question your responsibility in this, which I think from a traditional martial arts standpoint, it really resonates with us, because in the traditional kung fu world, especially Chinese martial art, there's a lot that is unsaid, because the tradition of the Sifu student relationship is just having like almost an unspoken respect, to where you have complete trust and you don't question things. Whereas in
Yeah.
this modern day, it's like question, question, question. No, no, ask, 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 right? And so we have made adjustments in our tradition while still being able to keep what I believe is the core of and important parts of our traditional martial art. Like, we're not mad if a student asks a question. Like, we understand in modern society, they are not training 8 hours a day, because
Right.
there is a difference too. Like, you think about the traditional thought, and people who say, well, I'm super traditional because we only train in the woods. And someone actually came into the school and said this to you, like, I paid my instructor with blood, sweat, and tears. There was no money exchange. And you're like, well, there's electricity here. So and there's just so much mystique around Chinese kung fu. And I really do believe that you and I follow what we believe is Grandmaster Chan's vision of keeping the core of what we believe is traditional, which is the art form, which is the integrity of it, and which is the passing down of the knowledge in its purest form possible. But by being able to then modernize our approach to how we give that information and communicate that information with science, and saying, hey, you can use these exercises to supplement, because we found that not everyone can jump into a butterfly horse stance, which is this very, very difficult stance that Master Chen can literally was jumping around in. And we've been able to kind of make adjustments while keeping the integrity, which is super challenging.
Yeah, definitely. And so I guess you think about, so we're talking about, well, how do you get good at something or approach something as if you're trying to master it and master it yourself and all that? What is the mother of mastery? There's that saying that's like repetition is the mother of mastery. So you can always, if you have that thought, that mindset of extreme ownership of, well, I'm the one who's deciding to do what I want to do, right? And I allocate the time, I prioritize my time doing these things, then you shouldn't really be upset when you haven't met whatever goal that you set for yourself. Your question should be, all right, well, repetition is the mother of mastery. Have I put the reps in that I needed to put in? And I can tell you for myself, I don't do it. It's funny because I talk a lot about mobility and stretching. And I know I do practice a specific way to train my joint health. I consider it more like strength training for the joints. but I really am interested in being able to move a certain way for Kung Fu, but I don't always necessarily put in the time towards that type of training, right? I still prioritize, well, I still want to lift a heavy kettlebell, or I still want to do these other things. So I'm okay with where I'm at in my life because I know that the decisions after I turned, I don't know, 12 years old, 10 years old, they're all have been mine. Like no one has really forced me to do anything. I've been the one who decided to do the things that I did. So at 42 years old, almost, yes, there are things that I, as a martial artist, and would have liked to been able to do, and a place where I would have liked to have been. But I also realized, thanks to books like Extreme Ownership, that the only reason that I'm not there, 99.9% of that, is because of all the choices that I made and how I prioritize my time. And that is also because we are teachers and coaches, right? I think it takes a little bit of time for students to understand that. And the faster that they understand that, the less frustrated they'll be with their training.
Yeah. So let's
They will
recommend.
realize, yeah.
Yeah, at this point, I think we should recommend a couple books. So one is, we've quoted a lot in this conversation thus far from Grandmaster Chan's Wallum history book, which is the goal of being a martial artist is mastery of yourself. And it's like repetitive, but it's such a great book for traditional martial artists. And that is available on audiobook or ebook on Amazon. So those interested, that's there. And obviously you and I talk a lot about extreme ownership. You don't have to be a coach or a teacher. I think it's helpful, actually. It's from a leadership standpoint, but if you take it as I'm a leader of myself, then I think you can learn a lot. And then also,
well, the other thing with extreme ownership, just a quick synopsis, is ultimately you are in control of it. All falls down to you. But regardless of where you are up and down the chain of command, you can lead. You can have extreme ownership down the chain so that you as a leader can lead people. But also if you are reporting to someone, teachers, your Sifu, you can lead up by your example. So that super simple concept was eye-opening. I don't know, what is it, 4 or 5 years ago for us.
Yeah. And it's been interesting. It's been certainly an interesting journey in how we approach teaching teachers. So we train coaches, we train assistant instructors, and I think it has really helped with, like I said, bringing in modern technology and science and methods to something like a traditional art form. And there's just this like fine balance, right, of how do we maintain the tradition and set the expectation of the students to be able to learn this while using all those tools. And I think it's been kind of an interesting adjustment for both of us and journey, and we're constantly learning, which is fascinating. But I did want to mention one other book, which was always really interesting. I know there's been some controversy over the exactness of it, but I think the concept of it is there, which is that whole repetition is the mother of mastery. But you and I adored reading Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers, which the thing that resonated immediately when you read what we were like, oh my God, this says 10,000 hours is a mastery thing, right? And in Wallum Kung Fu in particular, we consider one of the hardest weapons the double-edged sword. And in our book from 1960s and on, 70, it was like, oh, the game, the double-edged sword, takes 10,000 days to master, right? And so it's just kind of interesting that number keeps coming up, but I don't think it's so much about the specificity of the number. It's more like, yeah, in order to be a master of this, you need to do it a lot.
Yeah, so there's a couple things, and this just prevent me from tangenting too much, right?
Okay.
Because there is this thing when we read that book Outliers, that number pops out, and that has to do with, we have been practicing this art for years, and so that number is in our brain, and we can seek it out more. It's that fancy term, which is the RAS, the reticular activating system, right? It's like when you buy a car and then all of a sudden you see that car all the time.
Right.
It's the same concept that we know, okay, it takes 10,000 hours to master the double-edged sword. All right, I'm really far away. And then you read this book that's super interesting and you think, oh, it takes 10,000 hours and to be a master at this, whatever it is that you're doing. And so that resonated because we were kind of searching for that number. And the one thing that there's not really that much controversy, really, I don't think there is with the creator of that 10,000 hour rule and Malcolm Gladwell, who with his brilliant storytelling made it very popular. But the main thing is to realize that it's 10,000 purposeful, mindful hours of practice. Right. Is the purposeful intent practice, not just spending 10,000 hours doing something. It's, if you go back to even me, let's say that I put in 10,000 hours of Kung Fu. I would say maybe 1,000 of that has been with real true intent, right? The other 9,000 has been just, I don't know what the hell I've been doing, right? And so this is why I still have a long way to go for mastery. So I think that's part of that controversy, or not controversy, just clarifying what that is. But I think those 3 books, if you're a martial arts student or a human being, right, are really good.
Anyone who wants to learn.
Yeah. And here's the other part that I was going to say is that I won't call this person out by name, but we had read books like Extreme Ownership. And the challenge with books like that, and even with books like your father's book,
self-help or things that have philosophy,
is that
that's obvious.
It's obvious. And when you read it, you can quickly bypass it and say, well, I already know this. This is stuff that I've already read. And so many people do that. And then in the same instant, like within the next 5 seconds, are not doing the things that they said, well, I didn't really need to read this because I know it already. And so, well, maybe you need to read it again. Maybe if you don't, maybe you've read it, but you don't really know it. You haven't mastered it. And so it goes back down to the reps.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to read it like 10 times.
I love that also, because it's not just that, but it's kind of like in martial arts and Kung Fu, and even Tai Chi, we always say every movement should be with intent, with purpose. Correct. And like you just said, the 10,000 hours is intentional hours, purposeful. Like it's not just, oh yeah, I did my scales once and then I fiddled around on my instrument, right? Like you really have to put in actual practice. And so I love that the plug-in of that intentional or purposeful. And so with Kung Fu or Tai Chi especially, you have, I'm moving with that intent. And then that next piece, which ties in the extreme ownership, is, am I acting with intent, right? So it's kind of like, correct. Yes, I'm moving, I'm doing the physical part, but then it's like, oh, I read this, I know it, but am I doing the action? Am I implementing it? So in the same way you would need to purposely move with your punch or your kick or your stance, you take information of concepts that we understand and know, and then say to yourself, like, truly ask the whys and the whats and the ifs. Am I actually doing these actions? Am I putting them into proper use and play? Am I actually doing it? Like, I know that one should be kind before they're right.
Yeah, but I just learned that maybe 2 years ago.
Right. But I'm not saying that I do that all the time.
Okay, so yeah, so right? Like, intuitively
so I
we know.
Read something, and that's the point of people who maybe read Extreme Ownership or any other book that's kind of a self-help or a goal setting, or here's how you could stay organized. Well, obviously, if you make a checklist, that will be helpful, and you're like, oh, I already know that. But then do you do it, and then do you follow through, and then have you refined that process for yourself to where you know how you're maximizing your time, your efficiency? Have you then continued to refine those lists and then make templates and then take them and say, wait, is there a better way? Like that little thing I just went through right now is, oh yeah, I know about checklists, so I already know that. But it's like, are you implementing it? Those are two separate things.
Yeah, so then this makes me think of, regardless of what your role is, teacher, student, right? It is very likely that whenever you're doing something right and correct, no one notices. But you want everyone to notice, because that's our ego. Like, oh, I just did that right. And anyone see that? But yet, when you think that when you're not doing the things that you're supposed to do, and you're like, well, that's okay, everyone notices.
Yeah.
Like, like I feel that I don't want to call myself a failure, but I feel like that is a huge opportunity for me for growth, because I am so quick I taught this class today and I was so quick to run and tell you like, oh man, this kid came up to me and said, hey, that was a great class, right? I was so proud. No one really noticed it but me, because the kid came up to me, right? The student, he came up to me and told me. And I
he
really
was
wanted
7 years old, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, he's
it
like
was really cool because he's like, let's
right.
let's actually share this story because it's completely
But-
adorable. Oscar,
but-
you've been a teacher at the Wallam Temple for a long time, but like, and I don't want you to lose your train of thought or interrupt, but I think this is really fun. Is you were subbing for somebody who was supposed to teach the kids in the little Mantis class. So you had the 3 to 8 year olds, and that's not your normal thing. Like, when was the last time you taught a 3 to 8 year old class?
I can't remember. I don't remember.
Over
honestly.
a year, easily, maybe even 2. And so Oscar gets plugged in today voluntarily, and this little kid comes up to him at the end, and then you go ahead and share. It was
Okay,
just,
so now this sounds like bragging, right? But he just said, I'm gonna have the greatest weekend. That was the greatest class, and you are the greatest teacher. And I was just like, my head, of course, exploded. And I immediately said, hey, can you let Sifu Mimi know, she's my boss, so that would be cool. Kind of joking, right?
Yeah.
And he walked away, and I love this kid. This is a funny kid. But the funny part about that is, again, I couldn't wait to tell you about it.
Yeah.
No one else in that class knew that this student told me that, right? He just came up to me and told me that.
Yeah.
But I'm dying to yell that out to the rooftops. But again, this is an opportunity. I don't want to look at it in a I'm trying to be better at not using the negative term of like, well, I failed here. But an opportunity would be for me to say, okay, thank you, that was awesome. Is for me to say, okay, well, where could I have done better in that class? And I think I could have planned it a little bit more. I could have taken a few. I kind of was going off instinct, right? But I think I could have done a little bit more planning. So I think the main point that I was trying to make is that we all fall under this trap of wanting to say, hey, look at how great I am, whether or not someone told you this, but you're like, we're taking this back now to as a Kung Fu student, right? You do a specific move and you're like, that was awesome. And I really feel like I did that really well. And yet there are times where, let's take something like our basics for Kung Fu and we're just doing a horse stance. And I'm like, I'm not really pushing that much. I guarantee you that more people notice me not pushing myself hard than they notice me pushing really hard.
Yeah. I think that's our human nature, is to point out flaws versus applaud hard work and applaud those small wins. And I think within ourselves, we are also very hard on ourselves. There's different types, right? But I think generally people are really hard on themselves, and except for the really egotistical and big ego people that are like, no, I'm great all the time. I don't really. True martial artists, that's counter. So you're not an actual martial artist if you actually think you're like the greatest thing of all time, because that's completely contradictory, right? So I don't even believe you can be a true martial artist and actually think that you've learned everything there is to know. So I think if you're a true martial artist, you are going to be kind of critical and hard on yourself, and you don't celebrate the wins. But on the flip side, us as instructors tend to only point out what needs improvement. I think that's
and
just
and
our
instructors
as well.
Also. So the teacher also.
That's what I mean, as instructors, pointing that out to students.
Yes.
Like, I don't know, fix this.
So I do have this opportunity to coach a lot of class hours. So let's say as a Kung Fu school, there's 8 possible Kung Fu classes there, and we have 3 Tai Chi classes a week, and and we have some kids classes. There's probably close to 20 martial arts classes going on a week, right? And no one instructor teaches all of those. I do have the opportunity of putting in close to 20 coaching hours, training clients. And so I do have a benefit there to then when I am teaching Kung Fu, I use those same kind of mythology or mentality of, okay, let me just compliment them first. Hey, then here's what we need to work on, and then compliment them again. So Mike will kind of call that the shit sandwich. Like
we love the great Mike Boyle.
Yeah, so kind of like compliment, here's how you can improve, compliment, right? And so I think that's something that I don't do it all the time, right? But I could do better, because it's so easy to say, all right, hey, what you didn't do right was this here.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And
And we're also pressed for time. Like, to be fair to our coaches and stuff, we're like, no, we need to fix the things that are wrong and like get through it. We only have this amount of minutes in class. I mean, it's not an intentional like trying to put people down, right? As instructors. And then as students, it's like you have to remember also, like, there will be a time, and in traditional martial arts, there's not a lot of praise. Like, I can't even
we have
count
to
the
be
number
okay
of
with it not
times
being,
my father has said to me, oh wow, your kung fu looks really good today. I mean, maybe on one hand, and I'm 43 now and I've done it my whole life. And so yeah, it's traditionally, you're not really going to get that. And
well,
that was one.
yeah, your father hasn't ever complimented me in martial arts. I think I've told you he's complimented me on two things. One is showing up early to teach my classes, and two, on shaving my head, because he saw
He
me shave
watched
my
you
head.
shave your head and thought it was
Those are the two
amazing.
main compliments that I've had over the past 20 plus years. So, yeah.
And I think that's another expectation setter. And kind of in a second, I want to go into that cultural aspect, because we're not just talking something tradition, we're talking about a Chinese tradition. So there's this cultural intersection. But before I go to that, I wanted to mention another opportunity to bring up a book that did help us with this, which is, of course, Growth Mindset, which is instead of me using failure, I'm using opportunity. Instead of saying, oh, you're really smart, you would rather say, oh, you're hardworking, and compliment hard work, or compliment a narrative that encourages one to be better versus think they're talented or the chosen one.
Yeah. So my cousin, who's in education, said there's a great addition to growth mindset powered by yet, by the word yet.
Mm-hmm.
And we started using that a lot, which was instead of saying, first of all, if someone in the past was like, okay, I'm not good at push-ups, and we'd be like, just keep working at it, right? That's part growth mindset. Hey, if you work on it, then you will get better at it. But it's also then trying to get the person who said, I'm not good at push-ups, to add yet to it,
Mm-hmm.
because that powers the growth mindset.
Yeah.
So that is a great book. And then I think, just to bookend and to tie in the whole mindful practice thing, and this is to encourage Wallum students to read their student handbook, is you did a class months ago, it seems like now, I can't remember the exact date, where you took your instructors, your demos class, which are basically all the instructors, and said, all right, we're going to go through our basic stances as a drill. And here's how I want you to transition into these stances. And that focus increased the intensity of just doing those stances, where I thought, okay, you know what, I usually try pretty hard. I would say I'm at like a 6 or 7. But then
like your client's nutritional journal.
Yeah, but then the focus was like, nope, you know what? Now that I realize it, now I really was probably at a 3. And there's this Wallum Kung Fu students, page 29 in your student handbook, the external and internal poem: hand, eyes, body, technique, footwork, energy, spirit, respiratory strength, force, power of attainment, all of those things going into each move, into every single move. And so if I were to define mastery being repetitive practice, and that practice being intentional, I would need to put all of those things into each technique. So now I rescind my initial thing of saying, all right, out of 10,000 training hours, maybe I had 1,000 of intent. I probably have closer to 45 minutes to an hour of intentional practice.
Students now are like, that's it, I quit, I give up, this is impossible. I mean, but that's the thing, that's the point. We want you to understand the culture of it and what really is also going into that tradition. And every single move has so much intention. It's not just one element, there's several elements. And so to kind of piggyback off of that, moving into the culture part, but it's like some people get frustrated with that, whereas well, I think you get frustrated, but at the same time, you have yelled out so many times because you're like a hungry hippo for knowledge. And sometimes you just yell, there's so much to learn. And you want only to retire and become a full-time student of knowledge. You want to do this with strength training and stretching and mobility and this science. I mean, if you could just read and ingest food all day of knowledge, I think you would. Like, that's your nature.
I would actually pay someone to be my curator of my education so that I don't, so that
In
I can
all your
really stay
favorite
focused.
subjects, like you would
In
get
all
to
my favorite
basically
subjects.
pick all your favorite things. And
Right. Like, let's say I had the money, that money, I had
Bezos
Bezos money.
money.
Well, 99% of it I would give away because who the hell needs that much money?
Right,
But the
right.
other 1%, I would use it for having someone who curates all of the stuff that I'm interested in addition to coaches who would hold me accountable to doing it.
Okay, so
And I would
I
just
mean,
want,
this is
I
just
would
for
just
my,
want to be learning.
this is for my fun. So if you had to pick like 4 subjects, let's just say, how would you put those? What would your little buckets be for that?
Yeah. So
Who would be your guru coach?
yeah. So I would probably want,
And you can have a staff, right? Like if you say, for
yeah.
example, strength training, right?
Yeah, so I would want the opportunity to move those around, right? Because you know, as you go through it, you'd be like, okay, the importance has shifted. But my first thing would be some kind of movement slash strength slash martial art, like that practice. Because I don't know, that I'm super fascinated with is like genetically I don't have this huge potential to do stuff, but I know that the body is so adaptable that if given the time and the correct force inputs, that the stuff that I would be able to do would exceed my expectations. I am very realistic with what my expectations are, though. Like, I would never play for the NBA. I would never be an Olympic athlete, but whatever would help me to reach that limit of what my body was able to do and move, that's where I would put probably most of the focus on. And then obviously I'm just fascinated with history, so I probably would have some kind of history professor. And then
Dan Carlin.
yeah, maybe Dan Carlin. I'm ready for my daily lesson. Yeah. And then I don't know. And then well, that first one takes so much,
That
I
first
think.
one's like 3 things, really.
Yeah, it'd be like
Strength, mobility, martial. But
strength,
I mean, to be
yeah.
fair, you kind of are living your dream right now
Yeah,
already.
yeah, no, that
Let's
is
face
true.
it,
That's
like
true.
you have like you've trained with Mike Boyle and Brett Jones and like some of your favorite strength coaches.
Yeah,
And that
no,
also lights up mobility. And so it's like
yep.
kind of
And I
like,
do
wait,
kung fu at Walam Temple. It's
exactly. I
awesome.
think
Yeah,
you have a great Sifu.
yeah, the best, the best. And I think that would be, and then I guess this is just trying to. There has to be some way then to tie all those things, the movement and the maybe student of history type of thing, to then say, okay, now how can I truly then make this so that it benefits other people, right? Like I have to have some
You got
part
to
of
give
that
back.
as
You
well.
can't just take, learn,
Yeah,
learn.
yeah, 90% take and 10% give back. I think that would be good. Something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay, so to tie it all in or to kind of bookend this, I kind of wanted to wrap up with the setting the expectation and understanding that there's a cultural aspect to this, right? So it's not just taking, even though, for example, kettlebells is a Russian, correct? Originated, it's still like culturally speaking, there's not, other than maybe terminology, it's not as deep rooted as something like Chinese martial arts. Like it is there's such very, very specific etiquette, expectations and understanding of the Chinese culture in order to properly be a traditional Chinese, kung fu practitioner. And you coming from the outside in, maybe can share that learning curve, right? Because you did have martial arts experience prior to training with us at Walam. You came in from a different angle. We were already together once you started to train, but like you came in kind of seeing it as an outsider and now being someone who's entrenched in it. Like I'd love for you to share to someone who is looking to maybe learn and understand it, or someone who struggles with that cultural barrier, or maybe anybody that you think could benefit from like understanding what that learning curve is like and what you've learned from it and what you continue to learn, of course, but like what that was like for you.
Okay, so I'll try to explain what it was like for me, and then you let me know if that is the answer you're looking for. If I think back to it, and it's sort of like you and I were already together, and then I started with doing Tai Chi because your mother, who's the Tai Chi master, She really is. I kind of complimented her on that today. I was like, wow, man, your basics are so good. Anyway, so your mother's the Tai Chi instructor at Walam said, hey, why don't you start taking classes? And I started doing that. And then your father was like, hey, you have to learn everything. Once he figured, well, I guess Mimi's serious with this guy. So
and you started to work at the school.
And I was working at the school. I was the Spanish ambassador. Hey, that's okay. That's compliment number 3. Your dad does compliment me for speaking Spanish. Okay, so we have that set.
Thank you to Oscar's parents.
Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Dad, for just
being
never
Dominican.
speaking to us in English. So I'm thrust into the Walam/Chan family, and I think something that's important for a student to understand. I think they instinctively know this, but is when you look at your family, they have to know how much this is part of their lives. It's not a job necessarily. Like we all, I had a job I was a sales rep, right? Pharmaceutical sales rep. That wasn't my life, didn't define me. The Chan family with Walam, that defines them as well, right? It's who they are. So for me coming in, I would see something, and this shortened my learning curve exponentially compared to a student, is that I would take the class as a student, and then we would go home and have dinner, and we'd have dinner like with your parents. And because this is all part of your life, you would have conversations about the class and about students and about what the culture, all this is meaning right after I just took the class. So it connected a lot of dots for me looking at it from that perspective. I don't think if for that learning curve wouldn't have been the way that it is, because even then it still was a big learning curve. Like you still have to learn, oh, here's what the etiquette is. Something as simple as making sure that you serve tea a certain way, making sure that when you visit your instructors that you give them, you have something to give to them as, just as gratitude. Like, so there's so many things and rules and etiquette that is instinctive. Is instinctive? Is that the right word? Instinctual for you and your family, because you all are in it 24/7 and have been in it for now over 50 years. That for me being kind of thrown into it, there were a lot of times where I just was like, oh, okay, I see why that is. Oh, and then then going back into class and understanding why as an instructor, your mom would answer a question a certain way, or then you're teaching Kung Fu why you taught this certain thing, or why something frustrated you as an instructor, as the teacher, as the Sifu, why certain things and actions of the students hurt you as an instructor because you care so much about this style and about this art. Because it's not just learning how to block and punch and kick, or learning a set of forms. It's like, this is equals life. It's just what it is. The instrument or the tool or the device that you guys have chosen to travel, to take, to get to what you think is the best possible life for yourself, right? So it matters so much that me being there and kind of seeing it from both of those angles, it did cut my learning curve quite significantly. And I was able to sometimes look and go, oh, okay, but this person just said, as a student, that's not right. They shouldn't have said that. Or on the flip side, going, wow, that's really a great student, what they just did, because they don't even know how much that means to your mom or your dad or to you, right? There's just a lot to it.
Yeah. And so obviously you have a really unique experience, but since you've been teaching now and you've been in this life for over 20 years, what would you say is the most challenging concept or etiquette or cultural barrier? What do you think is the hardest thing for like an American walking into a traditional Chinese Walam Kung Fu school, because we're not just in Orlando, we're everywhere, right? Like, what do you think is the hardest thing for people to grasp? And what's the biggest, okay, let me rephrase. What is one of the most important things that they should know that is the hardest for them to kind of come around to?
Yeah, I think it would be 2 things. Number one, is if you decide to do this, you'll never reach the end. There's no ending until you die. Then
then it's over pretty much, unless you're
then your watch has ended. Then the watch has ended, right? So I think that is super important. Like, that's how serious we take it, right? You and I, your parent, like your entire instructor staff. I think that's how serious we all take it. If someone were to come in and say, man, I really want to learn this, when can I get good? Never. You'll never really be good enough. You're always going to try to be better. You're always going to be trying to be better. And then number two would be, don't ask for the traditional. This is the traditional part. Mm-hmm. Don't ask your instructor for new stuff. Mm-hmm. So that's the etiquette part that I think is instilled in the culture of China, of, like, you know, of where this martial arts came from, is you don't ask your teacher for new material. You just practice. Like, you just keep practicing.
Yeah.
And they will look at you and say, you're now ready to move on. Or you take your student who's now has his school in Germany. How many years did Torsten come to the temple and practice his ass off until you said, hey, what are your goals? And he said, I want to become a Wallam Sifu. Oh, okay. Let's have this conversation now. Because he came into your peripheral vision, and all of us, through hard work, mm-hmm. not just attending classes.
Yeah. So there's two things I want to address there. So your first point is, I think understanding that this is for life goes back to something I said earlier, which is, one, it can be very frustrating, or two, very inspiring. And my hope is that when people come in and I say, well, you're never finished and you're never going to master this and you're never going to get to the quote unquote end, there's no final certificate, you don't graduate. You can take that two ways. You can either A, be frustrated and upset about that, or B, go, oh my God, that is the most amazing thing, because that means I will be learning forever and constantly evolving and constantly getting better.
Yes.
And I'm constantly growing and I'm constantly mastering myself, right? And so there's two ways that you can decide to approach your traditional training. And I hope that you take the latter, right? Which is like, okay, I know that I'm on this journey and every day is just going to be constant improvement if possible, but that there's no quote unquote end in sight, and not to be frustrated. The second thing is that asking for something new. And I think the answer to that as an instructor for like a student's like, well, I don't understand why, right? Isn't actually answering the, I don't understand why I can't ask. The answer is, you should understand anything you're doing is new, even if it's the same movement. So if you only got to do punching today and you're like, well, I did punching yesterday, but we worked on punching today, there is something new there. Maybe one of your elements was off. Maybe your stance was off. There's the layering. So there's that depth, which goes back to point number one. I'm going to be learning every day. And so therefore every day is a new day and a new opportunity to learn something new. Whether it's the same day you had as yesterday, my hope is you've learned something that day. Whether it's, I need to wake up a little earlier because I was late to work, or there was unexpected traffic, or whether it was, I cooked something this way and now I know, any single thing you're doing in life, which goes back to, what does Kung Fu mean? We interpret it as hard work, goes into you constantly learning Kung Fu in that hard work, and knowing that whatever actions you're taking is something new, is something moving us towards that goal, that end goal that's never ending. So it's very interesting how intertwined that is, right? But I think if students and instructors, because as instructors, we are always students first, and we always will be learning. And we know that as instructors, once you get to that level, my hope is that you already have that concept down, but good instructors anyway. But if you can grasp those two things, which you just totally identified as some of the hardest things for students to overcome, I think if you can grasp that, you're on your way to becoming a lifelong practitioner of, traditional Kung Fu.
Yep. And I think it's funny because we're saying this and I'm like, man, I hope that this sticks with me. That's what I'm trying to think. I'm thinking right now is like, how can I make sure that I remember what I'm saying? And not in this kind of egotistical, like, wow, what we're saying is so brilliant, but like, we are so flawed that we know what is right, but we still don't always do it.
Well,
We still continue
it's
to.
like, do I want to have this for desserts? Even though I know that my, blood sugar is up, or that wasn't in my plan for the week. We know what's quote unquote the right things are sometimes, or the things that move us towards or away from our goals. Maybe is the thing that you like to use, right? Or do I know that I should get 8 hours of sleep, or do I know? Of course we all know. It's just like reading some of these books. We know, but are we doing it with purpose, and are we putting the actions into are we doing the actual actions, right? Are we putting
Yeah.
it our intent
So
behind it? So
yes. So it's funny. I had this thought and I was like, it's like slipping from me, but it's this other, while you were explaining like how, or I guess reinforcing what we talked about of how important this is to us and how valuable we not only, it's not just that we think it, we know how valuable it is. One of the things that over the past few years, maybe it's just been the past like 3 or 4 years, that I've really come to terms with is that yes, we care about this so much and know how good it is, but I'm totally okay if you don't. Like, I'm still going to answer to a student who asks, when am I done? I'm still going to answer it, never. You're never going to be done, in kind of almost a sarcastic way, because deep down I know that out of every 10 students, only one will last a few years. And then out of every one of those who last a few years, only one will last 10 years, right? Like, we kind of know that's just the way that it is. And it's okay if people decide on their own, okay, this isn't what I want to do for the rest of my life. Like, I look at that these days with no judgment. If someone was like, you know what I want to do? I want to do like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or MMA, or I want to, like, cool. I mean, as long as you have asked those questions that we talked about earlier of what is it you want to accomplish? Why do you want to do it? And then if you, if you were practicing, let's just say if you're a Wallum student, I would hope that then if you do decide to move, that as your instructors, that we would have taught you enough to then move to that other place without ego and without judging what got you there. Because this would be an entirely different podcast, but I think there is part of in martial arts of like, well, my martial arts is the best, or this martial arts didn't do what I wanted it to do, and therefore it is inferior to this other one. And I think if we all approach it, any type of learning, this could be like you wanting to become a chef, right? If you approach it with all of these things that we've been talking about, and then try to remove a lot of the ego part of it that we all just have in us as part of being human beings, then it would lead to a lot more, I don't know, it'd just be better for everybody, I think.
yeah, well, of course. I mean, that goes back to being a better human, which you and I talk about all the time, and actually just believing because what you think is right doesn't mean it's right for everyone. And if you like bananas and I don't, and you're like, well, then you're stupid, because bananas are the best, right?
If someone said that about bananas, that's fine, as long as they didn't say that about plátanos, about plantains.
Okay, and a whole nother conversation, which we have touched on with what is a traditional seafood and what does that mean, is also if you do decide to close that chapter of your life, then moving on with respect, and then not claiming the knowledge you have as your own, and that you are now the master of all things Wallum, because now you learned like a year of stuff, and that's a whole nother conversation. But basically being respectful all around, and like you said, either you learn the lessons or you don't, right? And there's so much more philosophy, so much more depth. We could go on for hours, but I think our listeners are like, all right, we get it.
All right, we get it.
Well, if you do or don't, let us know. And Oscar and I are very happy to have these conversations. It's like just philosophical kung fu stuff, and it's a lot of fun for us. But I do think there's value into it, and we have had requests for people for us to talk more about kind of that martial journey and maybe things that might hopefully resonate with people. So I hope it was helpful.
Right. So this is my last part that I want to contribute to this. One, you and I later will be like, man, that was a great conversation. We were awesome. Right? Let's just say that we provided a little bit of value to go into this growth mindset, and also this constant quest for trying to improve. What do you think we could have done better in this conversation? Is there anything that comes to mind? Like, I think, as always, there could be more clarity in how we express views, right? But
Well, I think what's interesting is off air, you and I sat down to do this discussion and you're like, so what are we talking about? And so just like when I tell instructors, if you go into your class prepared and just take a little bit of time to like write out what you want to do, well, they get lesson plans at the Wallam Temple. So it's a little bit easier, but even still having that preparedness. I mean, obviously there's content. I'm sure that there were things that we maybe could have clarified, but I think for me right away being the queen of all things organization, if I had maybe written down 3 main points for us to kind of stay within, maybe there would have been more structure. But at the same time, these conversations are so organic, often I do that and we go off track anyway. So I think
Right.
what we did was a good like kind of pre off air discussion and kind of had our talking points. But I mean, for me organizationally, again, it's like talking about oneself. Like you can ask me questions about myself and I'm like, well, I think I answered them all right because it's me, it's my life, right? And so Kung Fu is my life and has been since I've been breathing, literally. Like literally it is all I've known. And so while I don't think I know everything about it, and I don't think I'm the foremost expert, I definitely have enough confidence to know I have an expertise. So I do believe in what we're talking about. And from our experiences, I believe our intent is good.
Correct.
So my hope is that it comes across and is well received.
Yep. I'd agree with all of that. And I think this is just me. I realize that when someone asks me a question or when I'm formulating an answer, that I'm always initially thinking of it from my point of view, which is of course very natural. And I think an area for improvement would be to try to think about it from the person that we're trying to provide value to. Mm-hmm. And I think we kind of touch on it. We kind of go back and forth. But me personally, I always think of it in my context first. And which is fine, right? I'm just trying to think of like
quote unquote host is to kind of bring it back in.
Which you did, which I noticed that you did, and that's why I'm saying that I think, I could probably just improve on listening skills or something like that, right?
All right. Well, listeners, please let us know. Like, let us know if you have questions on things like this, because Oscar and I are always learning, and we love to have these discussions. And sometimes we have them off air, and we go, we should have recorded that. That was a really good conversation, because we would love for our students to hear this and benefit, but also to be able to have the opportunity to continuously say and teach and learn, like they go hand in hand. So it's super beneficial for us as well. But if you do have questions, let us know. And Oscar, it's always a pleasure to talk to you on Culture Chat.
You know what? I can't wait till we talk again.
All right.
In 5 minutes.
All right, everybody. Have a good day.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to Culture Chat, and hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please subscribe and rate my podcast. Feel free to leave me suggestions or send an email to mimi@culturechatpodcast.com, or follow me on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook.